Today we're going to talk about multiplying decimals. Now, multiplying decimals is slightly different than adding and subtracting. When we add and subtract decimals, we want to make sure that we line up our numbers. For example, when we add and subtract, we make sure our decimals are in line. When we multiply decimals, we actually ignore them. At least to begin, we ignore our decimals to start. We multiply like usual, and then we place our decimals in after. So let's go ahead and start by ignoring our decimals. I've got 4 and 8 tenths multiplied by 7 and 2 tenths. So I'm just going to line up my numbers so that they are all as far to the right as possible. Now, in this case, our decimals do happen to line up, but I'm still ignoring them. I place them in, but I'm more concerned about the number at the very end of each of my numbers. Those need to be in line. Okay, so now I've ignored my decimals, I've written my numbers out, and I'm just going to multiply like I normally would. Again, still ignoring those decimals. So I go ahead and start by saying 2 times 8 is 16. Carry the 1. 2 times 4 is 8. Plus 1 is 9. Okay, now I go to my second digit, dropping that 0 down. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 4 is 28 plus 5, which is 33. Now I add them up. I've got my two numbers here. 6 plus 0 is 6. 9 plus 6 is 15. 1 plus 3 is 4. And 3 plus 0 is 3. Now, I have ignored my decimals, lined up my numbers. I've multiplied like usual, and now it's time to count my decimals. Okay, so I'm going to count the number of digits to the right of the decimal point in all factors. So remember, this is a factor and this is a factor. So I'm going to count the decimals here to the right. Now, there is 1 decimal and 1 decimal number. So these are your decimal numbers, the numbers after your decimal point. So there's 1 here, there's 1 here. Now I say, okay, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Okay, so from each of our factors combined, I have 2 decimal places. So I take that 2 and I place it into my product, the answer to my multiplication problem. I start at the end here, and I move the decimal 2 times. 1, 2. So your product, the answer, would be 34 and 56 hundredths. That decimal is in between 4 and 5. Let's try another example here. We've got 3 and 1/10 times 5 hundredths. So again, I want the last number in each of my numbers, the last digit in each of my numbers to be in line. So I'm going to go ahead and write 3 and 1/10. And then that 5 goes under my 1. 0 goes under my 3. Decimal 0. So here, our decimals are not in line. But just like before, we made sure that final digit is in line. Now, I just multiply like usual. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, go down to 0. And I know that 0 times all of these is going to get me 0. So now I add. I'm left with 5, 5, 1. Now, how many places will we move our decimal? We count the number of digits to the right. So that's 1. And here's 2. Now, when you're counting, go ahead and make sure that you're counting the numbers after the decimal. So now 1 plus 2 equals 3. That comes down to my product, the answer to my multiplication problem. Now you want to make sure that you start here, and when you make those jumps, when you move that decimal, they go in between. Sometimes we get careless and just start making loopies. We don't want to do that. We take it from one side of the 5, bring it to the other side. That's 1. 2, again, in between two numbers. And 3, our decimal goes here. So we, in our answer, in our product, would write 0.155. We want to place that 0 here because we don't want to lose it, lose that decimal on accident by not seeing that there's a 0 in front. Okay, so our answer is, our product is 1 155 thousandths.